Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Buddy Fight video. So today I'm going to be continuing the topic of cards I want to see banned and or limited, because I feel like Bushi should really start using that list a little bit more, considering how high powered the game is. I'm going to start off today's video with saying that I want Vanity Zero Blazer either banned or limited. The reason why I want this card either banned or limited is similar to some of the other reasons in my other video. It's just a very feels bad card to play against because it could just straight up win the game out of nowhere. And because Lost World is a part of a lot of decks, it's a very highly played card and almost every deck can use it. But Grace of the Sun deity exists, so that kind of helps keep cards like this in check a little bit. Like, Grace of the Sun deity is good, but you're not always going to have it in your hand at all times. You can never assume that you could have it in your hand at all times, even at 4. Like, there's just a chance that you just will not see it, and losing to a Vanity Zero Blazer just feels really bad because it's just deal 10 damage out of nowhere. Its casting condition is pretty easy, and its cast cost could actually just be free, but 3 gauge isn't necessarily that hard because there's just a lot of ways to gain gauge, and depending on the deck you're playing with, it's just not very hard because you could previously set it up from your previous deck, then go into Lost, and then just Zero Blazer, win the game. But regardless, if this card was limited to 1, I wouldn't feel really super bad about it, but it just kind of speaks to the power level of Lost World, and I feel like Bushiroad should at least start banning or limiting Lost World cards because they're just kind of completely out of control and some of the most powerful cards in the game. But for this list, instead of going through every single Lost card and either saying I want them banned or limited, I'm just going to stick with Vanity Zero Blazer because it's just the biggest feels bad card. The next card on the list is Eternity Ring. So this is really the only hyper deck specific card that is on this list, and that just speaks to the power level of the card. So what the card is doing is not only is it basically generating free resources by gaining a gauge and drawing a card for just putting it into the soul of a Prism Dragon, which 99.9% of the time is going to be a Thora. But what the card is also doing is, while it's in the soul of a Prism Dragon, when it attacks, it can destroy a card on the opponent's field and deal 1 damage to the opponent. That's just really, really powerful, on top of which this card can stack, and it's searchable in Athora. So what Athora decks really like to do is just search out all 4, play all 4, generate some free resources along the way, and then they'll just start swinging and popping everything on the opponent's field and burning them and dealing attack damage as well. So it's just doing a lot, and the biggest problem with the card before was it kind of had a soft answer in the fact that you had to rest the Athora so that way it can't attack, so that way the Eternity Rings just don't trigger. So that was the only real way to deal with the card before, and now that there's an aggro Athora that not only can he stand and have restanders, he also has an impact that basically takes an extra turn. Having a higher damage output Athora stacked with Eternity Rings, it's just spelling problems. Like, it's just spelling you should just play aggro Athora just to burn the opponent out and just destroy their field if it can. Like, there's a lot of anti-destruction, so okay, the destruction is kind of mitigated a little bit, but there are some decks that just don't necessarily have those protections, so this card just completely kills them and demolishes them. And then, like I said, Grace is a card to stop the burn, but you're not always going to have Grace, and on top of which, if you live 1 Grace turn, they have the impact to take an extra turn, and if you don't have a second Grace in your hand, then you are just basically dead. Seeing this card either banned or limited to 1, I feel like is totally okay. Even at 1, this card is still kind of a little too powerful, but like, if Bushi just wants to limit it to 1 to not like completely kill off the deck, I can understand that, but I personally would want to see this banned. But seeing it limited to 1 is probably the more realistic answer, that if they were to do it, is what they would do. The next card on the list is Holy Magic. So I would be okay with Holy Magic being limited to 1 because it kind of just cannibalizes all Magic World decks to be a Holy Magic deck. So what Holy Magic is doing is basically it's returning different spells from your drop zone back into your deck for a couple of different effects. If you return 3 or more different spells, you basically gauge 2 and gain 2 life. If you return 6, you draw 2, and then if you return 9, you deal 3 damage to the opponent. What the card is really doing in a lot of Magic World decks is it's basically telling every single Magic World deck to run this like menagerie of draw spell package where they basically would just draw their deck, play Holy Magic, reset their deck, draw their deck, play Holy Magic, reset their deck, and it just creates a very unhealthy play pattern in Magic World as a whole. And on top of that, like, it's just also burning the opponent out, and you just are generating like insane value because you're just drawing your deck, playing Holy Magic, reset your deck to draw into more Holy Magic. And the fact that you could run multiple copies of Holy Magic means you could Holy Magic one of the Holy Magics to basically create a situation where you'll never ever deck out. And decking out necessarily isn't the problem. It's the fact that the card just does so much and forces a lot of Magic World decks to just run Holy Magic and be more of a Holy Magic deck than what they actually are. Because they could just run a couple of good defense spells and then just sit on recycling Holy Magic and slowly burning the opponent out. And they also could utilize a whole bunch of other generic spells to kind of just create this really weird generic deck of like, I'm just going to draw cards, play generic defense spells, play my attributed defense spells, and then just Holy Magic to basically just recycle my deck and win the game off of it. Like, yes, it's a slow strategy and it's not exactly very, but the fact that it cannibalizes a lot of decks to basically just be about Holy Magic is more of the problem. And if it was limited to 1, that means they would actually have to run something different because it just kind of takes away the deck design of Magic World to basically just be about Holy Magic. Then the next card I want to see either banned or limited is Red Thunder Emperor's Awakening. This card is just actually kind of insane, and it pairs up with Eternal Rivals a little too well because Eternal Rivals basically just sets up your grave for whatever you want. On top of which, this card is just insanely splashable in every single Dragon World deck. It's insane in Thunder Empire. Like, this card just really needs to get hit. And if it does get hit, getting hit to 1 is probably okay. I don't necessarily think this card is like hyper ban worthy because it's more of a facilitator of the problems rather than the problem itself. What the card is doing is you put the top card of your deck into your gauge and gain 1 life. Okay, a little bit of resource gaining just on base, that's fine. Nothing stupid there. But what is really stupid about the card is its second ability. Then, if you have 3 or more cards with different world names in your drop zone, you put up to 1 card from your drop zone into your hand. So getting to 3 different worlds is not very hard for basically any deck because they'll have their base world, which is already 1 world. They'll have probably a generic, which is 2 worlds, and then there's just so many good dual spell cards that, like, it's not very hard to get a dual spell card in there. So, as an example, like Eternal Rivals, to set up the card that you want to bring back with Red Thunder Emperor's Awakening, that's a dual world card. So, if you're running a Dragon World deck, all you need is a generic card in your drop zone, and then boom, the card just is able to get you back any card, and it can facilitate a lot of problems, and it can get back basically any card in your drop zone is just really powerful. The 6 or more part is a little bit less relevant, where you also can draw a card. Obviously, that's more meant for Thunder Empire, because in Thunder Empire it's a little bit easier to get that off, but it's the fact that it can return any card from your drop zone to your hand that is the problem. And people will run like 3 to 4 copies of this and basically just combo it with Eternal Rivals to basically just tutor out anything in their deck is just insane. And I feel like if they limited the card to 1, now you have a less likelihood of A, seeing the card, B, you only get one copy, so you have to really make that tutor count, and there's not really a whole lot of ways to recycle the card. Like, yes, there is the Guardian spell that basically just puts everything from your drop zone back into your deck, but now you have to draw your one of again. That's not searchable. Limiting this card to one just probably would help keep the unhealthy interactions this card can make down to a minimum, and while there's a ton of other problematic cards, I feel like this is probably one of the more widely played problematic cards, because I was looking at a whole bunch of different cards for these videos, and the ones I'm picking are more broad. So the ones that can go into a lot more decks and aren't necessarily deck specific. Obviously, Eternity Ring is the exception to this because this card just is stupid, but everything else is just more of a general sense that a lot of decks can use them, and because a lot of decks can use them, a lot of decks can abuse them. That's kind of my thought process on picking some of these cards, and the fact that all of these cards just create very bad interactions that just feel bad for the player, and if you're not having fun, then what's the whole point of even playing? And Bushi really needs to start using their ban and limited list, because the game is just in such a hyper powerful state that they really need to start doing something. Otherwise, the game is just going to get out of control and not necessarily be a really fun game that people actively want to play. Instead, it would just end up being what? About matchups and coin flips. Like, that sounds like real fun. I sit down to just auto lose the matchup, or I sit down to auto lose to the coin flip. That's basically what the game is kind of headed to. And while I think the core of the game is still really fun, like, they could fix a lot of problems just by banning or limiting certain cards. That's kind of all I have for this video. Feel free to tell me in the comment section what cards you want to see banned or limited. And as always, feel free to like and subscribe for more Buddy Fight content, and I will see you in the next video.